So, good morning. I'm Roy. I hope this works. This is gonna be my very first attempt at some sort of a developer blog for the game that I'm making now. It's Palace of Prospects. It's a card game, and I've been working on it for like half a year now. And I'd like to take any of you watching with me on sort of an journey, like what the thought process was and what the thought process is going into further development of the game. So it's a card game. It's a card game based around 4 decks of action cards that people play. It's a 4-player game. So 4-player game. That's good to know. Um, and basically, players play combos with their cards and defeat monsters. That's the premise. And there's a lot more going on around the game, so it can get pretty intense and heavy. So that's something I would like to dial back on further in development, and that's kind of what I'm gonna do after I've explained everything. Okay, so first thing to talk about would be the map, right? Like, if you play the game, what does everything look like? So, when you play the game, you can expect to have something like this to be your playmat. There are 6 different types of rooms, and the players, crawl from the first floor all the way up to the 10th floor. It's like a dungeon crawler, and it's cooperative, and it's a card game. It's a cooperative dungeon crawler card game, and a deck builder. But I'll come back to that. So what you see here is a room called a combat room, and that is where players will encounter monsters for combat. I'll show all the cards later, but this is the most important thing to get out of the way. A very interesting thing comes in with this room, because it's a reroll room, and then you think, like, what can I reroll? You haven't said anything about dice. This is a map, and yes, it's a map, and it's gonna be a map with dice on it as rooms. It's sort of an idea I had to make replayability a real thing with this game. So every time you're gonna play it, you're gonna throw dice on sort of a hopefully nicer map than this, with with blank rooms, and you're gonna fill them in, so that every run you would do is always different. That's pretty cool, right? At least I thought it was pretty cool. And that was kind of the idea from the start. We've been playtesting it since like 2 times, 3 times now, as of today. And it has been working pretty well. Like, map layout's gonna change, but the idea is there. Here are question mark rooms, and that's the room where players draw a question mark card. And that's basically some kind of an objective that the player has to fulfill before another player does the same thing. So you have to keep your eye out and complete that objective in order to gain rewards, mostly. Like, it's an incentive for people to kind of not really work against each other, but make suboptimal plays in something that would otherwise be a cooperative game. Here's an item room, and that's as easy as it is. The player there gets an item card. Item cards can upgrade the character stats, or they can do other cool things. They can grant you abilities outside of battle. Here's a warp room, and they are pretty important because the whole map is random. Like, they're important in the same sense as the reroll rooms are, because the reroll rooms, like, they can screw you over pretty hard, as in the original board state can screw you over pretty hard, and this is a way to help you get over that. You have to travel to reroll rooms in order to more cleanly advance over the board. Warp rooms are a way to get other players out of trouble. It's like teleport rooms. You kind of, if you are in a warp room or teleport room, I could call it the teleport room. You can teleport another player toward you. That's all it does. And I mean, it can be pretty nifty. I hope it stays for like the final version. I think it will, but you can never be sure. A shop, players can buy items in the shop and some other things, and I'll come back to that too, because that, like, I have to build it up now. So first all the basic ideas, then the thing the game is about really, and then all the nitty gritty stuff. So we got this. That's the shop, and those are all the normal rooms. Yes, those are the normal types of rooms. Here's the boss. That's basically floor 10. Everyone comes back together to defeat the boss, if you weren't already together to begin with. And you see floors 1 through 9. These numbers are called floor numbers right now because they are... No, not because they are important, because they are the number the floor is on. But they're gonna be important for a lot of things. So keep them in mind. That's floor number. Yes, what else? Okay, let's start with combat. You play as a player. I've got some character cards for that. You're either one of 8 characters as it stands now. You got a bard, a guide, a jester, a ranger, a paladin, merchant, sorcerer, warrior. They all got... Oh shit. I'll go tiny. Never done this. Each player or character card has an ability and stats. And those stats are gonna come in really important in battles. So I'll use the bard as an example. This is a bard. He has or she, they have confidence as an ability. You can play any action card of the same value as the one played before you this round. That sounds like gibberish if you have no idea what I'm talking about, and that's probably what's happening right now. So sorry, I will explain later. I'll go into the stats first. So it's gonna be combat in which people, the players, play action cards and combo them together. So you have cards in your hand. Basically, the stats to the left says how many cards you have in your hand at the start of a turn, or how many cards you have in your have to have at least in your hand at the start of a turn. So a bard starts with 6 cards in their hand, and if a bard would have more than 6 cards in their hand at the end of a turn, they can draw up to the amount they had in their hand at the end of the previous turn. Like, if you have 8 cards in your hand and the turn stops and you draw a new hand, grab 8 cards, sure. It's good. This is a very important one, because this goes in to values. And values is basically a number that action cards have on the left side of the card, and they indicate when the card can be played. So value is really important. And here is the maximum value this character can start combat with. So this is a stat you only use at the very start of combat. Combat starts, Bard begins, Bard can play a 3 value card, or a 2 or a 1, because those are the values below 3. Then we go to a stat we call velocity right now, and that's the amount of value you can surpass the previously played action card with. So previous player played a 3, Bard can play a 5 or a 4, and in the Bard's case a 3, but most characters can't do that. All other characters can do that. And I think I'll come back to this later too, because all of this might sound a little difficult now. So I've talked about action cards and value and whatever, and I'd like to go into that now by looking at the Dawn deck. This is one of the 4 decks that players can play with. Does it help? I'm gonna be real small. Okay, this is one of the 4 decks people can play with, and it's good to note that every deck has their own sort of flavor. Like, this is the Dawn deck. The Dawn deck is a deck that is sort of a cleric deck. It gives cards to other players. It's sort of a healing, supporty kind of deck. It's not really the damage deck. So if you look to like the most basic card is the Scattering Light. It's a 1 value card, deal 1 damage, and the player to your right plays next. So basically all action cards have a value, a name. Name is mostly flavor. In affinity is the name, well, not really. Decks are either from the Dusk, Dawn, Shadow, or Light affinity. I'm dropping stuff left and right. I'm so sorry. I'm not used to this. Cards are from one of 4 affinities. The decks are called affinities. So a card from the Dawn deck is a card from the Dawn affinity. And that's gonna come in later too. It's like Pokemon types or whatever. Except for it's nothing like Pokemon types, but it's a way to it's a way to get it in your head. Then basically the card has something that it does, like damage or another effect. This one deals damage, and it has a direction of play. So basically, if you play Scattering Light, the player to your right plays next, and that's always the case. If you play Dewdrop, the player to your left plays next, and they can draw 1 action card from their deck. Yeah. So basically, that is what cards do, what action cards do. Now, value is important because I've talked about value in the character card. So these two stats have value as a very important metric. Metric? I don't know, but value is very important to them. So this was a 3, right? So that means that if the bard has the Dawn deck and starts combat, they can only start with up to a 3, up to Rise of Spring. Deals the damage, next player draws action cards until they've drawn one with at least 4 value. Like, they can use all these cards to start combat, the 1s, the 2 and the 3, but they can't start combat with a 4, a 5 or higher. I hope that explains, like, something. I hope I'm not making it just worse. Maybe nice to get into the other decks quirks a little bit. As I said, the Dawn deck is a support kind of deck, so other players draw action cards. That's what it does. It makes other players draw action cards most of the time. Or next player draws action cards so they have 6 cards in their hand. Like, something like that. And it does damage. Then we have Dusk Deck. That's the second deck. And that's basically, hey, I deal a little bit more damage than the Dawn deck, and I will draw cards myself. So the Dusk deck, the player with the Dusk deck will most likely have a very full hand. Yeah. The light deck is kind of a strange deck, and it's supposed to be. It's the most quirky of the decks, and it's supposed to deal a lot of situational damage. Basically, like, you can see it in the 1 value card. It has deal 2 damage and deal 2 damage if the previous action card that played this combat was of the Dusk or Shadow affinity. So 2 damage, and there's some damage that you could have if this combat's situation favors you. And most of the light action cards work like that. So you have to pick and choose and play them in the right situation. Then the last deck you can play as is the Shadow deck, and this is like the high damage deck, but it cuts into your own hand. So you can see it already in the Shadow Punch. It deals 2 damage. That's not that much, but you may discard 1 action card to deal 4 damage instead. So the Shadow deck wants to discard action cards to deal damage. That's what it does. And discarding action cards means that instead of playing them, you lay them on your discard pile, and you won't get them back until until the end of combat. So if all monsters you face have died, you will get your action cards back that you discarded. Otherwise, you can't play them anymore. You will not get them back into your deck or your hand. I guess that's sort of... No, that doesn't wrap up the action cards. So basically, every player starts with a starter deck from one of the 4 affinities. And a starter deck is a deck with 3 cards from every 1 value of the deck. So the Shadow player would get 3 Shadow Punches, 3 Sneaks. They would get 2 Lunar Expansions, 1 Deterred Light, and 1 Dark Flames. 3 3, 2, 1, 1. And they have, so at the start of floor 1, here, at this combat, right here, you have 10 cards in your deck, and all players do. And then all action cards with a value of 2, because the next floor is floor 2, and that may sound strange that all action cards with value 2. Wait, I haven't said what will happen to them. Sorry. There will be a common deck. A common deck with all unowned action cards. And on floor 9, that common deck will contain all unowned action cards. So it will contain every one of these cards with 10 value, with X value. I'll get back to that. 7, 6, 5. All action cards will be in there because the common pile of the common deck gets upgraded after every floor you climb. And after every floor the players climb, they can draw 3 action cards from the common deck and keep one of them. So on floor 1, all the 1 and 2 value action cards will be in there in a common deck. It's shuffled, and players can choose out of 3 action cards, choose one they like, and the other ones go back into the common deck. And it's good to note here that players can choose action cards from all affinities. So if you start with a shadow deck, you can build a deck with light, dawn, and dusk action cards in there if you want, just to get your own playstyle and make your own tactics. Try to play in on the decks of the people right and left of you. Oh my god. Basically, you want to play. You don't want to end a combo, so you must have sort of a compatible deck to the decks around you. Because if you can't play, you take damage from monsters. And that's where the monster cards come in. And I will take them and show them right next to the player cards. I'll just start with a Thundercloud. Here's a Thundercloud, here's a Bard. So, floor number is pretty important because it determines a monster's health. Also because it determines the common deck and that sort of stuff, but we've already talked about that. So it determines the monster's health. This monster has 6 health plus 2 per floor number. So floor 1 it has 8 health. It's easy enough. And then its attack. We have seen that the stats on the characters, on the character cards, have all sorts of numbers above and below the stat that you actually start with. So why the other stats? Well, that's because you can up those stats and you can take damage in those stats. Basically, if you can't play an action card when you should, a round ends and you take damage. And a Thundercloud deals 1 hand size damage, so your hand size goes from 6 to 5. Because that's the number right below it. If you take damage again, you go from 5 to 5, but it's the lower 5. That's how it works. And then every monster has an ability, and that's basically just to flavor them up a little, spice them up, so that you don't just have random like things that only have an attack, don't do much else, because that's boring, in my opinion. Like that's not how I want to design a game. Every second turn, that should be a round now. Every second round, deal 1 initial damage to all players. So then it does both the attack and the ability. So you take the second 5 damage and wait, the second 5 damage? The second damage here that takes you to 5, and the damage here that takes you from 3 to 2. And the way this damage works, and the character's not really having HP, means that if you take damage, the game gets harder. Because you can't play as much action cards anymore as you would have wanted, or would have. You can't play as much action cards anymore as you would have if you hadn't taken damage, basically. Because if you take damage here in your velocity, take enough damage, you only have velocity of 1. That means that if someone plays a 4, you can only play a 5, nothing else. That's means you're gonna have a really hard time in this game. Okay. What happens if you beat a monster? If you beat a monster, you gain coins equal to its value. Value is here on the left, just the same as with action cards. Beat the monster, get their value as coins. Nice. And those coins you can buy stuff with in the shop. Basically, in the shop, there are gonna be. I'm gonna make myself bigger again. Whee! In the shop, there are gonna be 3 action cards and 3 item cards. But all the unowned action cards are in the common deck, right? No, because those weren't the only action cards. There are Eclipse decks, Eclipse action cards, and these are action cards you can only buy in the shop. They cost their value. Like you can buy certainty for coins, rearrange your deck as you please, draw an action card, discard 1 action card, choose which player plays next. That's the thing all Eclipse cards do. It's choose which player plays next. That's what you buy them for. Like, their effects are also good, but you'll play them and you'll buy them so that you can choose which player plays next, so that you can kind of battle through combat as efficiently as possible. So if, let's say, you'd play a card that only goes to the left and the player to your left can't play, he takes damage, she takes damage, they take damage. If you play this 4 value, you can just look to your left, and if there's someone nearly sobbing because they can't play, like, I'll play to another player. So that's something those cards do. I have absolutely no idea how I came up with this, but it was something that makes them stand out from other cards. Yeah, What else should I talk about? Yes, in the shop, you can not only spend your coins, but you can also spend your action cards as coins. So, items are expensive. Oh yeah, there are 3 items in the shop too. So there are 3 Eclipse action cards and 3 items in the shop. 6 things to buy total. And you can only buy 1 every time you're in the shop. Items are expensive. Really expensive. Like, you have a linen cloak for 4 value, but linen cloak is not really a good item. It's a one-time use item, and it lowers the value of an action card by 1 for this turn. Doesn't do a lot. If you go all the way down here, you get to items that cost 12 or 10. For example, knotted bandages. Heal the traits of your choice if you play 12 value. Oh, heal trait of your choice by 1 for every 12 value you play in a round. It is supposed to be a round. I'll have to change all of those wordings. Yay. But you heal. That's great. Or you can play anything you want once every combat. That's really good. But having 10 coins is kind of a hassle. Getting 10 coins is kind of a hassle, is what I mean. So, let's say you're on floor 6. And for some... Wait, no, you're on floor 5. And for some reason you have 5 coins. Only 5 coins. Then, if you want to buy a 10 value item, you can, if you want. Well, you have to, if you want to buy a 10 value item. Look to the floor number, and that's the amount of value you can exchange for coins from action cards. That didn't come out nicely, but you can exchange 5 value worth of action cards for coins to buy the item. You cannot have spare coins left obtained from exchanging them for action cards. You know what I mean. I hope. Because I don't know how to say it otherwise. This is a mechanic to thin your deck and maybe adapt to a late game strategy of some sort, if you want to. Or just to throw away cards at random, as some of the playtesters have done. That's almost all of it. I'm so sorry this is such a long video, but it's also kind of a difficult game to explain, and I am very bad at explaining, so I hope you all stay with me on this one. Last thing. Is it the last thing? 2 last things. 2 last things. For in this introductory video. Every time you grab a card from the common deck, as you should do every time you go to a next floor, well, there's a maximum value you can grab, right? If you're at floor 4 and you're gonna advance to floor 5, you can grab a 5 value action card. But there won't always be a 5 value action card, or the 5 value action card won't always be the best choice for you. Maybe you already have lots of 5 value action cards for some reason, because you're like a godlike entity or something. That means you can grab a 3. value action card, and this means you get coins, because every amount of value you take from the common deck that is below the maximum value you could have gotten, you get in coins. So you get a 3 value and you get 2 coins if the maximum value you could have gotten is 5. I really hope that was kind of informational or understandable. And then the very last thing is the lock deck right here. I haven't talked about that, and this is for now because I'm looking at a replacement mechanic. Basically the lock on the door between floor 9 and floor 10. And it is a common goal for all players, because all players together must have whatever it is they have to have in order to open the lock. So for the Lock of Fortune, all players must possess 24 coins total. All players together must possess 24 coins to open this lock. You don't, you lose the game, because you can't advance from floor 9 to floor 10. Also good to note, like, you can all only move up. Like, these are the floors, and then you have those little paths to the next floor. You can only just move on the paths and just move up or move to the side and up. That's what you can do. And then there's these colors, and that's something I've been toying around with too, and that's color specific paths. So basically, if you're character X, you're the only one that can take this path. If you're character Y, you're the only one that can take this path. And then here you can warp people towards you, if you want. Well, not if you want, you'll have to. But those are the main mechanics in this game. I am so sorry that it took me 40 minutes to 40 minutes to try and explain this all. It was without any script. I should have written a script. But if you make it to the end of this video, I am very grateful to you. I will make more of these, because even though it doesn't really come naturally, I'm gonna try and make higher quality content as the videos go on, and I basically want to express all the ideas I have for advancing the game in videos like this. If you like it, please let me know in one way or another. I am Roy. Let's just say I'm the Calfman. Okay, that's what the account's called. The channel is called. This was Palace of Prospects. First, very an introduction to Palace of Prospects. I will share more information on it later as the production continues. Bye.